It's been the biggest assault on a European state since World War II. When it's begun, Russia started to carry out the special military operation in Ukraine.
I decided to conduct a special military operation. It seems to protect people who have been bullied and subjected to genocide by Kyiv regime for 8 years. For that, we will strive to demilitarize and denazify Ukraine and will bring justice to those who committed multiple crimes against civilians, including Russian citizens.
Kyiv also stressed that it do not allow Moscow to obliterate it.
We are already handing out weapons, and we will hand them out to defend our country to everyone who wants to and has the capacity to defend our sovereignty. The future of Ukraine depends on every citizen.
The West responded with sweeping sanctions targeting almost all key sectors of the Russian economy.
Ukraine will never be a victory for Russia, for free people refused to live in a world of hopelessness and darkness. We will have a different future, a brighter future, rooted in democracy and principle, hope and light, of decency and dignity, of freedom and possibilities. For God's sake, this man cannot remain in power.
The plan is to focus once more on technology that can and should not be used by Russia's war machine. In other words, we look deeper into components that were found, for example, in drones, to make sure that there's zero availability for Russia of these technologies or the drones production, for example, in Iran.
South Africa has taken a non-aligned position on this conflict. President Cyril Ramaphosa has also emphasized that the United Nations Security Council must be reformed.
The absence of other countries on the UN Security Council as permanent members weakens the peace efforts of the United Nations, and that is why we continue to insist that it should be reformed. Had the United Nations Security Council been reformed, we believe that we would have been in a much stronger position to ensure that conflicts such as these are avoided.
The Russia-Ukraine conflict has seen Ukrainian authorities pushing to join the European Union, and some of their allies like Sweden and Finland are keen to be NATO members. The Ukrainian president has also appealed for more military aid. Russia has also been busy reaching out to its allies on the African continent. And this week, Biden made an unannounced visit to Ukraine to reaffirm the U.S. support of the war-torn country. This was also affected global economy in a big way.
We have ongoing work on sanctions, working with our partners. We are seeking to strengthen sanctions and to make sure that we address violations of sanctions. And clearly the Russians are looking for ways, routes to backfill. We have deprived them of many channels through which they can obtain the materials that are critical for their defense efforts, and they're looking clearly to backfill to obtain that. And that's a particular focus that we have in mind, both with respect to enforcement and perhaps with respect to further sanctions.
For 365 days since the full-scale war against Ukraine, and 9 years since the start of the war, when Russia unlawfully occupied the Crimea and infiltrated the East Ukrainian region with its military forces, Ukrainians have continued to fight for their freedom, courageously defending their country and the right to remain a democratic state. Since 24th of February 2022, according to the UN Refugee Agency, 8 million Ukrainians have become refugees, with 90% of refugees being women, children, and elderly. In addition, 5.5 million Ukrainians have been internally displaced, and some 17.7 million people need humanitarian aid and protection.
While the war continues, South Africa, China and Russia are taking part in a joint naval exercise in KwaZulu-Natal, which has caused an uproar, especially in the global north. Khumalo, SABC News, Johannesburg.